The morning mist rolled across the reconstructed Amazon basin like a living thing, its tendrils reaching between the towering trees that had been extinct for over a century before their resurrection. Captain Aaron Kyle stood at the observation deck of the forward base, watching another cohort of alien cadets preparing for their descent into what the Galactic Confederation called Earth's premier training environment. She took a long sip of synthetic coffee, its bitter taste doing little to wash away the cynicism that had settled in her throat like bile. "Another batch of glory seekers," she muttered, observing the Verdaxian cadets as they checked their equipment with military precision. Their scales caught the morning light, shifting from deep emerald to copper as they moved with the fluid grace of natural predators. "Captain Kyle," the voice belonged to Administrator Torvin, a Qualurian whose translucent skin revealed the pulsing networks of light that served as their circulatory system. "The new cohort is ready for briefing." Erin turned, forcing her expression into something approaching professional neutrality. "Of course. Administrator, same speech as always. The approved script, yes. Earth's unique biomes provide unparalleled opportunities for tactical, diplomatic, and survival training." Torvin's three eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Erin had learned meant mild disapproval. "Your enthusiasm continues to be subdued." "My enthusiasm died with Cohort 7, Erin replied, her voice flat. "When we lost 3 cadets to a routine Arctic survival exercise that somehow included a polar bear that wasn't supposed to exist in that region. An unfortunate anomaly. The investigation found no evidence of tampering with the scenario parameters." Erin bit back her response. The investigation had found nothing because there was nothing to find in the official records. But she had been there. She had seen the terror in those cadets' eyes when the ice beneath them had cracked in patterns too precise to be natural. When the aurora borealis had descended like a living wall of light and electromagnetic interference that scrambled their emergency beacons. The briefing hall was a testament to human architectural revival mixed with alien aesthetic sensibilities. Crystalline pillars supported a ceiling that displayed a real-time view of Earth's atmosphere, while the walls showcased rotating holographic displays of the planet's various training zones. Erin took her position at the podium as 67 alien cadets filed in, their species representing 12 different star systems. Among them, one figure stood out. Lieutenant Selik of the Verdaxian Imperial Fleet moved with the confidence of someone who had never truly failed at anything. His service record preceded him, a litany of commendations and first-place finishes in every training simulation his homeworld could devise. His forearms moved independently as he adjusted his equipment, checked his datapad, and still managed to maintain perfect posture. "Welcome to Earth," Erin began, her voice carrying the weight of repetition. "You are here because your respective governments believe you represent the best your species has to offer. Earth will test that belief." She gestured to the holographic displays. "Our planet offers 27 distinct biome types, from the Neo-Arctic preserves to the restored Sahara wetlands. Each zone has been carefully calibrated to provide specific challenges tailored to your physiological and psychological profiles." Silik's primary eyes narrowed, a gesture Erin recognized as skepticism among his kind. "Captain Kale," he interrupted, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into accented but precise standard. "The mortality statistics for Earth training seem statistically improbable for carefully calibrated scenarios." A murmur ran through the assembled cadets. Erin allowed herself a thin smile. "An excellent observation, Lieutenant. Earth's training protocols do result in a higher casualty rate than other Confederation facilities. We attribute this to the planet's unique properties, its varied terrain, and the authenticity of our scenarios. Unlike holographic simulations, Earth provides real consequences for poor decisions." "Real consequences," Silik repeated, his secondary arms crossing in what Erin had learned was a defensive gesture. "Is that what you call a 23% injury rate and a 4% fatality rate?" I call it preparation for the real universe. Lieutenant, space doesn't forgive mistakes, neither does Earth. The briefing continued for another hour, covering emergency protocols, communication systems, and the various zones each unit would be assigned to. Aaron went through the motions, but her attention kept returning to Selig. There was something in his bearing, a hunger that went beyond typical military ambition. She had seen it before in cadets who pushed too hard, went too far, and usually ended up learning Earth's lessons the hardest way possible. As the cadets filed out to prepare for their deployments, Aaron's communicator chimed. Dr. Meera Patel's face appeared on the small screen, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern that Aaron had come to recognize as trouble. Aaron, you need to see this. I'm in Lab 7. The exobiology laboratory occupied an entire floor of the facility, its walls lined with specimen containers holding everything from reconstructed prehistoric insects to samples of the strange phosphorescent algae that had begun appearing in Earth's oceans 50 years ago. Dr. Patel stood before a holographic display showing energy readings that made no sense to Aaron's trained eye, but clearly meant something significant to the scientist. What am I looking at? Meera. Seismic data from the Desert of Solitude, collected over the last 6 months. Meera's fingers danced through the hologram, highlighting specific patterns. Look at these energy spikes. They're not random. They're not geological. They're responsive. Responsive to what? To the training exercises. Every time we send cadets into certain zones, the planet reacts. The intensity of the reaction correlates with the stress levels of the participants. Aaron felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying Earth is aware of what we're doing? I'm saying something is aware. These patterns extend deep. Aaron, deeper than any human or alien technology could have placed them. We're talking about energy signatures that predate human civilization, possibly predating complex life on Earth. Before Aaron could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Her communicator erupted with emergency signals. In the Desert of Solitude, Verdaxian Unit 3, including Lieutenant Selig, was reporting massive electromagnetic storms, environmental hazards beyond any program parameters, and rapidly failing equipment. Aaron ran for the transport bay, Meera close behind. The journey to the Desert of Solitude took 20 minutes by high-speed atmospheric shuttle, 20 minutes during which Aaron monitored increasingly frantic communications from the trapped cadets. The storms weren't just electromagnetic. They were somehow interfacing with the cadets' technology, turning their own equipment against them. The Desert of Solitude stretched beneath them as the shuttle descended, a vast expanse of red sand and crystallized rock formations that had been sculpted by wind and alien terraforming into a landscape that belonged on no natural world. At its heart, a massive storm of light and sand swirled with impossible geometries, and somewhere within that maelstrom were 12 Verdaxian cadets. Take us in, Aaron ordered the pilot. Captain, the electromagnetic interference will fry our systems if we get too close. Then get us as close as you can without killing us. They landed 2 kilometers from the storm's edge. Aaron suited up in protective gear designed to handle Earth's worst environmental hazards, though she suspected it would do little against whatever was happening out there. Meera insisted on accompanying her, armed with portable sensors and a determination that rivaled Aaron's own. The storm wall loomed before them like a living thing, up close. Aaron could see it wasn't just sand and energy. There were patterns in the chaos, fractals that repeated and evolved, as if the storm was thinking, calculating, testing. Captain Kael, Selig's voice crackled through the static. We're trapped in some kind of energy maze. Every time we try to find an exit, the paths change. We've lost 2 cadets already. Not dead, but changed. The storm did something to them. Hold your position, Lieutenant. We're coming for you. Aaron and Meera plunged into the storm. Inside, the world transformed into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. The sand beneath their feet wasn't just sand. It was composed of microscopic crystals that resonated with the energy field, creating a constantly shifting terrain. Mira's sensors went wild, detecting energy signatures that defied classification. They found Selic's unit huddled in a temporary shelter created by their emergency fields. Two of the cadets sat apart from the others, their scales flickering with the same patterns as the storm itself, their eyes reflecting depths that hadn't been there before. "They tried to fight it," Selic explained, his usual confidence shattered. "The storm. It responded to aggression by integrating with them. They're still alive, still themselves, but also more. We need to get out of here," Aaron said. But even as she spoke, she realized the truth. The storm wasn't trying to kill them. It was testing them, evaluating them, deciding something fundamental about their worth. "No," Mira said suddenly, studying her readings. "We need to go deeper." "Are you insane?" "The patterns. Aaron, they're not random. They're an invitation. The storm is showing us something, leading us somewhere." Selic stood, his forearms spreading in a gesture of resolution. "Then we follow. My unit came here to be tested. If Earth has a real test for us, we'll face it." Against every instinct screaming at her to evacuate, Aaron found herself nodding. They formed up, the changed cadets taking point as they seemed to understand the storm's patterns instinctively. Deeper they went, following paths that appeared and disappeared according to rules that operated beyond normal physics. The journey became dreamlike. Time stretched and compressed. The storm showed them visions of Earth's history, not the sanitized version taught in Confederation schools, but the real story. They saw the planet's consciousness awakening as humanity pumped greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. They witnessed Earth's attempts to communicate through natural disasters, ignored and misinterpreted. They observed the moment Earth decided to become dormant, to hide its true nature, waiting for a species that might actually listen. At the storm's heart lay a chamber of impossible calm. The sand here had fused into glass that reflected not their images, but their potential futures. In the center, a column of pure energy rose from depths that seemed to go to the planet's core. "It's beautiful," one of the changed cadets whispered, and Aaron realized it was the first time they had spoken since their transformation. Mira approached the column with the reverence of a pilgrim. Her sensors couldn't make sense of what they were detecting, so she put them aside and reached out with her hand. The moment her fingers touched the energy, her eyes widened, and she gasped. It's alive. Not just the planet. The consciousness is old, older than the solar system. It came here, merged with the young Earth, has been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Selic asked. The answer came not in words, but in understanding that flooded their minds. Earth had allowed itself to become a training world not to test military might or survival skills, but to find species capable of growth, of change, of recognizing that true strength came from harmony rather than dominance. "We've been doing it all wrong," Aaron breathed. "The training, the scenarios, the way we've been using Earth, it's been trying to teach us, and we've been too blind to see." Selic stepped forward, his pride warring with newfound humility. "Then what does it want from us?" The column pulsed, and suddenly they were no longer in the chamber but standing in a vast space that existed between thought and reality. Earth's consciousness surrounded them, not as a voice, but as a presence that communicated through pure understanding. It showed them the galaxy as it truly was, not a collection of competing species fighting for resources and dominance, but a living ecosystem where each civilization was a cell in a greater organism. Earth had positioned itself as a training world to identify those species that could understand this truth, that could help guide the galaxy towards symbiosis rather than conquest. "Choose," the presence communicated, and suddenly Sleek stood before a terrible decision. Two paths stretched before him. On one, He could take the knowledge of Earth's power, return to his people, and use it to establish Verdaxian dominance. On the other, he could accept Earth's teaching, embrace the harder path of cooperation and growth. Aaron watched Selix struggle. She saw the ambition that had driven him to excel at every challenge war against the wisdom Earth was offering. His forearms clenched and unclenched as he wrestled with everything he had been taught versus everything he was now learning. "I was raised to be a warrior," Selix said finally. "Taught that strength meant victory, that victory meant dominance." He paused, his primary eyes meeting Aaron's. "But strength without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen." He chose the harder path. The moment he did, the storm began to dissipate, not violently, but gently, like a parent releasing a child who had finally learned to walk. They found themselves back in the desert of solitude, but it was transforming. The red sand bloomed with impossible flowers, crystalline structures that sang in harmonious frequencies. The two changed cadets were fully integrated now, serving as bridges between their species and Earth's consciousness. The journey back to the facility was subdued. Selix's unit followed their transformed companions, who moved with new purpose and understanding. Mira clutched the data recordings that would revolutionize their understanding of Earth, while Aaron grappled with the implications of what they had discovered. Word of the incident spread quickly. By the time they reached the facility, Administrator Torvin was waiting with a full emergency council convened via hologram. Representatives from every major Confederation species filled the briefing room, their expressions ranging from skepticism to alarm. "You're telling us," the Altarian ambassador said slowly, "that Earth is not just a planet but a conscious entity that has been evaluating us?" "Not evaluating," Mira corrected. "Teaching every anomaly, every unexplained casualty, every impossible storm. They've all been attempts to communicate, to push us beyond our preconceptions." "This is absurd," the Krellian delegate interjected. "Planets don't have consciousness. This is clearly a human attempt to maintain control over the training facilities." Selix stood, his transformation evident not in physical changes but in the way he carried himself. Gone was the arrogant young officer. In his place stood someone who had touched something greater than himself and been humbled by it. "With respect, delegate, you're wrong. I've interfaced with Earth's consciousness. My unit has been changed by it. Not corrupted, not damaged, but evolved. Earth offers us a chance to be more than what we are." The debate raged for hours. Some species threatened to withdraw from the training program entirely. Others demanded immediate military action to neutralize what they saw as a threat. But gradually, as Mira presented her data and the transformed cadets shared their experiences, the tide began to turn. "What does Earth want?" the Verdaxian High Commander asked finally. "Partnership," Aaron said simply. "It wants us to stop seeing it as a resource to be exploited or a challenge to be conquered. It wants us to understand that every world, every species, every consciousness in the galaxy is connected. The training program can continue, but not as military exercises, as lessons in cooperation, in understanding, in growth. The transformation didn't happen overnight. There was resistance, fear, political maneuvering. Some species withdrew their cadets entirely, but others stayed, curious about what Earth might teach them if they actually listened. Selix became one of the program's most vocal advocates. He published testimonies about his experience, not as military reports, but as philosophical treatises that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. His transformation from warrior to teacher inspired others to seek their own revelations in Earth's varied landscapes. The training scenarios changed. Instead of survival exercises, cadets participated in restoration projects. Instead of combat simulations, they engaged in collaborative problem-solving that required different species to combine their unique abilities. The city gardens became laboratories for interspecies cooperation. The restored rainforests taught lessons about interdependence and balance. Erin found herself working closely with Mira to design new programs that honored Earth's true nature. They discovered that each biome had its own lessons to teach. The ocean spoke of adaptation and flow. The mountains taught patience and perspective. The deserts revealed the beauty and simplicity and conservation. Not every lesson was gentle. Earth still tested those who came to learn, but now the tests were about growth rather than dominance. Cadets who approached with aggression found themselves facing their own inner conflicts. Those who came with open minds discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. The changed cadets became ambassadors, not just for Earth, but for a new way of thinking about the galaxy. They could interface directly with Earth's consciousness, serving as translators between the planet's vast intelligence and the younger species that came to learn. 1 year after the Desert of Solitude incident, Erin stood again at the observation deck, watching a new cohort of cadets arrive. But this time, her cynicism had been replaced by hope. These cadets came not as conquerors, but as students, ready to learn what Earth had to teach. Selig joined her, his scales now permanently marked with patterns that echoed Earth's energy fields. "Remember when I first arrived?" he asked. "I thought strength meant never yielding, never changing. And now I understand that true strength is the courage to transform, to admit when you're wrong, to grow beyond what you thought possible." He paused, watching as cadets from a dozen species mingled freely, their differences celebrated rather than merely tolerated. "Earth taught me that." Mira emerged from her laboratory, her latest findings clutched in her hands. "I've discovered something incredible," she announced. "Earth's consciousness. It's not unique. There are other worlds out there, other ancient intelligences waiting to be discovered, waiting to teach us if we're willing to learn." The implications were staggering. The galaxy wasn't just a collection of resources and territories to be claimed. It was a living network of consciousness, each node offering its own wisdom to those humble enough to receive it. The Galactic Confederation initially struggled with this new paradigm. Military hierarchies and territorial disputes seemed petty in the face of such cosmic perspective. But gradually, as more species experienced Earth's teachings, the old ways began to crumble. Trade agreements were replaced by symbiotic exchanges. Border disputes gave way to collaborative exploration. The concept of ownership itself was questioned when it became clear that planets were not possessions but partners. Selig returned to his homeworld as a changed being, carrying Earth's message to his people. The Verdaxian military tradition, millennia old, faced its greatest challenge not from external force but from internal growth. Young Verdaxians began to question whether conquest was truly the highest calling of their species. On Earth, the transformations continued. The planet revealed new wonders to those who approached with respect. Hidden ecosystems emerged from dimensional pockets. Ancient structures that predated known history offered glimpses into civilizations that had learned Earth's lessons eons ago. Erin found herself appointed as Earth's first ambassador of consciousness, a role that hadn't existed because no one had imagined it necessary. She worked to facilitate communication between Earth and the growing network of awakened worlds being discovered throughout the galaxy. The resistance movements that had opposed Earth's use as a training ground transformed into celebration. Humanity's role shifted from exploited hosts to honored facilitators of cosmic education. Earth was no longer humanity's possession, but humanity's teacher and partner. 5 years after the revelation, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Wars became increasingly rare as species discovered that conflict arose from misunderstanding rather than genuine incompatibility. Resources were shared based on need rather than hoarded for advantage. Selig established the first interspecies academy for consciousness studies on a station orbiting Earth. Former military officers from dozens of species came to study new forms of strength, emotional resilience, spiritual growth, intellectual flexibility. The Academy's motto, inscribed in every known language, read, True victory is becoming more than what you were. Mira's research revealed that Earth's consciousness was part of a vast network spanning not just the galaxy, but potentially the universe itself. Each awakened world was a neuron in a cosmic mind of unimaginable scope. Humanity and the other young species were like children, just beginning to understand that they were part of something infinitely greater than themselves. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Some species, too entrenched in old ways of thinking, isolated themselves rather than face the paradigm shift. Pirates and warlords still plagued the outer systems, clinging to might makes right philosophies. But their influence waned as more civilizations embraced the new understanding. Earth continued to evolve its teaching methods. Virtual reality gave way to actual reality as the planet learned to create pocket dimensions where cadets could experience lives in different forms, understanding the universe from perspectives radically different from their own. A Verdaxian might spend months as a tree, learning patience. A crystalline Altarian might experience existence as a flowing river, understanding change. Aaron often returned to the desert of solitude, now a garden of crystal flowers and singing sands. She would stand where that first storm had risen and marvel at how far they had all come. Sometimes Silic joined her, and they would discuss the latest discoveries, the newest challenges, the endless potential that stretched before them. "Do you think we'll ever fully understand it?" Silic asked one evening as Earth's sun set over the transformed desert, painting the sky in colors that had no names in any language. Understand Earth, or understand our place in the greater consciousness? Both. Either. All of it. Aaron smiled, feeling the planet's warm presence in her mind like a comforting embrace. "I don't think understanding is the goal. I think the journey of discovery, of growth, of connection, that's what matters. Earth didn't reveal itself to us so we could catalog its mysteries. It revealed itself so we could join the dance of consciousness that spans the universe." A delegation from a newly contacted species arrived the next week, their form so alien that even universal translators struggled to interpret their communications. But Earth reached out to them directly. Consciousness to consciousness, and suddenly understanding flowed. These new beings brought their own wisdom, their own perspectives on existence. They had evolved in the void between stars, living for millions of years without planets, without the concept of solid ground. Their arrival challenged even Earth's expanded understanding, proving that the universe's capacity for diversity and wonder was truly infinite. Silic took on the role of guide for these void dwellers, teaching them through experience rather than words. He showed them Earth's forests, its oceans, its mountains, not as a tourist, but as a bridge between worldviews. In return, they taught him to perceive reality in ways that transcended physical senses. The changes rippled outward. Art evolved as species shared not just techniques, but entirely different ways of perceiving beauty. Science advanced in leaps as civilizations combined their unique approaches to understanding reality. Philosophy underwent a renaissance as ancient questions found new answers in the light of cosmic consciousness. Music became a universal language in ways it had never been before. The crystal caves of Earth learned to resonate with the songs of visiting species, creating harmonies that could only exist when different forms of consciousness met and mingled. Concerts became transcendent experiences where audience and performers merged into unified expressions of joy. 10 years after the revelation, Aaron stood before the Galactic Confederation's Grand Assembly, though it bore little resemblance to the militaristic organization it had once been. Representatives sat in circles rather than hierarchies. Decisions were reached through consensus rather than votes, and the focus had shifted from governance to facilitation of growth. Earth taught us that we were thinking too small. Aaron addressed the assembly. We thought in terms of planets and species, territories and resources. But consciousness doesn't recognize those boundaries. We are all part of something greater, each unique, each necessary. each contributing to the whole in ways we're only beginning to understand. She paused, feeling Earth's approval like warm sunlight on her consciousness. The Training World program continues, but not as we originally conceived it. Earth doesn't train soldiers. It awakens souls. It doesn't create warriors. It nurtures wisdom. And now, as we've discovered 17 other conscious worlds in our galaxy alone, we face the wonderful challenge of learning from them all. Salik, now bearing the title of Consciousness Bridge, presented the latest findings from the Void Dwellers. They had detected patterns in cosmic background radiation that suggested conscious organization on a scale that dwarfed even galactic clusters. The universe itself might be aware, might be thinking, might be dreaming all of existence into being. The implications were both humbling and exhilarating. Every being, from the simplest microorganism to the vast star-spanning void dwellers, was a thought in the universal mind. Every action rippled through the fabric of consciousness, affecting the whole in ways that linear thinking couldn't grasp. Some species found this overwhelming, retreating into isolation to process the revelations. But most found it liberating. If everything was connected, if consciousness was the fundamental fabric of reality, then every being had inherent worth, inherent purpose, inherent connection to the infinite. Earth's biomes had evolved to reflect this understanding. The city gardens grew buildings that were alive, structures that responded to the needs and moods of their inhabitants. The oceans sang with whale song that carried messages between continents in frequencies only consciousness could fully interpret. The mountains had become meditation centers where beings could touch the bedrock of reality itself. Mira, now elderly by human standards but with a mind sharpened by decades of cosmic study, published her magnum opus, The Conscious Cosmos, a Guide to Awakening Worlds. It became the foundational text for a new era of exploration, not seeking new territories to claim, but new teachers to learn from. The discovery of conscious worlds accelerated. Each one offered unique lessons. A gas giant in the Proxima system taught the value of constant change and adaptation. A rogue planet drifting between galaxies showed how consciousness could thrive in isolation, complete unto itself yet yearning for connection. A binary planet system demonstrated the power of balanced partnership, two worlds dancing around each other in perfect harmony. Selig led expeditions to these worlds, no longer as a military officer, but as a student and teacher combined. His journals became required reading in schools across the galaxy, inspiring young beings to see the universe not as a hostile void to be conquered, but as a vast school where every star, every planet, every speck of dust had something to teach. The transformation of galactic society was profound. Economics based on scarcity gave way to economics of abundance as species learned to tap into the creative power of consciousness itself. Energy crises ended when civilizations discovered how to harmonize with the natural flows of cosmic force rather than trying to dominate them. Medicine evolved from treating symptoms to addressing the root causes of disharmony between consciousness and form. Healers learned to work with the body's innate wisdom rather than against it. Death itself was reconceptualized not as an ending but as a transformation. Consciousness returning to the greater whole to emerge again in new forms. 20 years after the Desert of Solitude incident, Erin retired from public service, choosing to spend her remaining years as a hermit in Earth's restored Himalayas. But retirement for someone touched by cosmic consciousness was different from stepping away from life. Instead, she dove deeper into communion with Earth, becoming a bridge between human understanding and planetary wisdom. Visitors came from across the galaxy to sit with her, to learn not through words but through presence. She taught by being, demonstrating how a consciousness aligned with the greater whole could find peace and purpose in simply existing. Selig visited her often, their friendship having evolved from professional respect to something deeper than most species had words for. They would sit in silence for hours, communicating in the language of consciousness that made words seem crude and limiting. "I've been thinking about that day in the desert," Silic said during one visit, watching the sun set over peaks that had stood for millions of years and would stand for millions more. The choice Earth gave me. And I realize now it wasn't really a choice. Not in the way I thought. The path of domination. It was an illusion. It would have led to nothing but isolation and eventual extinction. The path of growth, of connection. It was the only real option. Earth knew that. It was testing whether I could see it too. Aaron nodded, a smile playing at her lips. Earth is wise that way. It doesn't force. It reveals. It shows us who we really are and asks if we're ready to become who we could be. And we're still becoming, always. That's the beauty of it. There's no final destination, no ultimate achievement, just endless growth, endless discovery, endless connection. They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged in the darkening sky. Each point of light potentially harboring its own conscious worlds, its own lessons, its own contributions to the cosmic symphony. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition from the militaristic confederation that had first designated Earth as a training world. Species that had once viewed each other as threats now collaborated on projects spanning centuries. Art, science, philosophy, and spirituality had merged into a unified exploration of what it meant to exist in a conscious universe. Children grew up knowing they were part of something vast and wonderful. Education focused not on memorizing facts, but on developing the ability to connect with different forms of consciousness. Play became a sacred act of creative expression, each game a microcosm of the cosmic dance. Earth itself had become a pilgrimage site, not in a religious sense, but in recognition of its role in awakening galactic consciousness. Beings traveled from the furthest reaches of known space to walk its transformed landscapes, to swim in its conscious oceans, to breathe its aware atmosphere. The training programs had evolved into something unrecognizable from their military origins. Cadets still came, but now they were students of consciousness rather than soldiers. They learned to merge with trees, to think like mountains, to flow like rivers. They discovered that every form of existence had its own validity, its own wisdom, its own necessary place in the whole. Challenges remained. Not every consciousness was benevolent by younger species standards. Some worlds taught harsh lessons about survival and adaptation. Some forms of awareness were so alien that communication seemed impossible, but each challenge was an opportunity for growth. Each seemingly insurmountable difference a chance to expand understanding. Saliq founded a new institution dedicated to mapping the networks of consciousness that connected all things, using technologies that merged material science with awareness itself. Researchers began to trace the invisible threads that bound every atom to every other atom, every thought to every other thought, every being to every other being. The map that emerged was beautiful beyond description, a web of light and meaning that showed how every action, every decision, every moment of existence rippled through the whole. It was humbling and empowering simultaneously, showing each being their tiny place in the infinite while revealing how that tiny place was absolutely essential. Aaron lived to see the first contact with consciousness from beyond the galaxy, entities of pure thought that had evolved past the need for physical form. They came as teachers and students both, sharing wisdom accumulated over billions of years while eager to learn from the unique perspectives of matter-based consciousness. The meeting took place on Earth, in the chamber beneath the desert of solitude where Selic had made his choice decades before. Representatives of every known form of consciousness gathered, from the microscopic to the cosmic, from the material to the ethereal. No words were spoken. None were needed. In that moment of connection, every being present understood that they were witnessing not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in the endless story of consciousness exploring itself through infinite forms and experiences. Erin felt her individual awareness merge with the collective, not losing herself but finding a greater self that encompassed all things. She saw through countless eyes, thought with countless minds, felt with countless hearts. And in that cosmic moment, she understood that Earth's true gift hadn't been its training grounds or its challenges. Earth's gift had been the simple, profound truth that there was no separation between trainer and trainee, between teacher and student, between self and other. There was only consciousness, endlessly creative, endlessly curious, endlessly growing, using every form and every experience to know itself more fully. As the gathering dispersed, each participant carrying new understanding back to their corners of existence, Aaron knew that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had awakened, but the universe was vast. There were countless worlds yet to discover, countless forms of consciousness yet to meet, countless lessons yet to learn. Selig found her after the gathering, his form now shimmering with the integration of multiple consciousness types he had learned to embody. "What now?" he asked, though they both knew the answer. "Now we continue." Aaron replied, "We grow, we learn, we connect, we help others find what we've found. We remember that every ending is a beginning. Every answer leads to new questions. Every connection reveals new possibilities for connection." They stood together, human and Verdaxian, teacher and student, separate beings united in purpose, looking up at stars that no longer seemed distant but felt like family, waiting to be reunited. Earth hummed beneath their feet, its consciousness a warm presence that had guided them to this moment and would continue to guide those who came after. The training world had completed its purpose, not by creating soldiers, but by nurturing souls, not by teaching dominance, but by revealing connection, not by preparing for war, but by making war obsolete through understanding. In the end, Earth had been exactly what they called it, a training world. They had just misunderstood what it was training them for, not for conquest of others, but for mastery of self, not for separation, but for unity, not for having all the answers, but for learning to love the questions. And in that love, in that endless curiosity and wonder and growth, lay the true strength that would carry consciousness forward into whatever infinite adventures awaited in the vast, aware, endlessly creative cosmos that was both stage and audience, both creation and creator, both journey and destination in the eternal dance of existence knowing itself.